We're live, and oh god, that music is super loud. 1 second. Looks a little bit better. Alright. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, The Bad Luck Gamer, with my co-host, Glue Boy.
Hello, hello.
And today we're going to be talking about, honestly, a wide net of different things that are kind of happening in the TTRPG space. Because honestly, it's like, I feel like it's every other day that something new is coming out, or we learn about something new that's going to be pretty interesting. Like the creators of Roll20 are releasing their own TTRPG.
Or is that Foundry?
Or Foundry. Was it Foundry or
Yeah,
Roll20?
it's Foundry.
Foundry. Some VTT. And on top of that, just all the big games are now like right on the edge of getting released, like MCDM. What's the other one? Oh goodness, it's
Like, I know one of those is the Matthew Colville one.
Yeah,
right?
that's the Matthew Colville one. Is the MCDM. It's something 20. Draw Steel's another one. It's DC 20. That's what it is. Yeah, DC 20. So there's definitely a lot, like, just on the horizon. Tabletop's going to be doing a lot of interesting things. Not Pathfinder 3rd edition.
Imagine.
What is changing? Oh, King Uga Tuntun.
Oh,
Yo.
hello.
What is changing? A lot is changing. I mean, there's just a lot of different things. It'd be hard to concise. There's just a lot of big games on the horizon, on top of like the Cosmere RPG. Daggerheart is moving into some of their final phases of their beta testing, and I'm actually trying to get in. I was emailed for Daggerheart's newest NDA beta test. So I'm gonna be taking a look at probably one part of the final book that's gonna be coming out for Daggerheart soon. So,
It's that fun bit where we're close to the moment where we had the bit where everything is getting teased and announced. And now we're getting to the part where we're going to see, I guess, the fruits of all of that. And it's going to start just dropping.
yeah. Also, love the content, Uga. Glad to see you here. Also, PAX Unplugged, anyone? Not this year. Unfortunately, this is a really rough year for me when it comes to that, because I'm going to be having a baby soon. So there's a lot of planning that's going into that, but I definitely think in, like, I don't know, it depends on children in the near future, but definitely plan on going to more events in the very near future.
That's the hope. I feel similar. But mine is purely because of a monetary thing.
Yeah, you don't have kids to worry about.
I don't have children to worry about, thankfully. I just have to feed my own mouth. And gosh, oh gosh, expensive to take care of my own life.
Yeah,
But,
how do you think I feel
God.
with a girl on the way? And
I know.
and then
You got-
probably
you got
another
on that.
one like a year or so after. We'll see. We'll see how the first one goes.
Yeah.
But
I want to go to those events. Like, I want to go to some tabletop events. I want to go to all those. And it'd be very fun to do. It's just, I got to save up that money to actually do it first, which is finally happening. Finally able to do it, so it's great. And the next year is like the first moment where I can actually be like, all right, I can set money aside. I can actually maybe go to, like, I don't know, if like a tabletop convention, if a Gen Con is nearby, it's realistic.
yeah, well, and it's, I don't know, it's crazy. Just like, even at these big things, like tabletop stuff has been creeping up and becoming more and more like prevalent in these kind of events as well. It's very we're in for, I think, a really big time in the upcoming years with tabletop stuff, especially because tabletop is just one of those things that are like, they're always going to kind of be in the nerd space that I think we're going to start sharing more and more with like Warhammer 40K, where it's like people hear about it, they want to do it, but they don't know anything about it kind of deal. Because like Space Marine 2 coming out, some people are like, I don't know anything about the Warhammer 40K universe, but this game's sick, and I kind of want to start learning a little bit more about this now.
It's so fun. Like, I mean, yeah, because I bought it early and I'm playing it. I spent literally all this morning playing it. Game rules, by the way, everybody. It's super sick. It's exactly what I wanted, and I'm having a great time. But it is really fun as I'm like playing it and I'm paying attention to everything, where I'm like, first and foremost, the amount of attention to detail. But second, like, some of the dialogue in that game is so much like, this is gibberish to a person who doesn't understand Warhammer. I hope it brings people in, and I can see like a lot of tabletop stuff doing the same thing. And just that bit where like you hear a person having that conversation about like a nerdy subject, and you're like, this is another language. What the fuck are you saying?
Yeah.
Because they're just talking about like, there was some conversation about like, yeah, did Caligar send this? No, the Primarch did this. And it's like, that meant like the implication of all that, and then asked about this specific battle, that like asking if Titus was there, and he said no. And I was like, oh my god. Oh, the implications. And that meant a lot to me. To literally anybody else, to most people, nothing. And I wouldn't expect that. But that's big. That's goofy shit. And I love it. And I do hope that is just a thing that can happen, because I want more prevalence in the hobbies I enjoy. Both Warhammer and tabletop RPGs. I want them to be present, and I want more people to be interested, just in general.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today, is a lot of the a lot of the new stuff, a lot of the news that have been coming out recently. I especially wanted to take the opportunity to look into Ember, because they have some pretty big claims of what they're going to be doing with this particular system. And the interesting thing about it, and actually something that I think we're going to start seeing more of, is a native VTT game system where you can, it's essentially like a game in a sense, or at least it has a lot of game elements that you use in addition to the role-playing aspects of the game. And so yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about that, but as we usually do, we'll have a little bit of small talk as people are jumping in here today. Would hate to repeat the news over and over. So Alex, what's been going on with you?
I was like going to be a bit more productive today, maybe get some stuff done. Then Space Marine 2 fell in my lap.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been you know, it's kind of like work for me, because I do a 40K channel, so I'm kind of researching.
I mean, only if you do a video on it.
I could, theoretically.
Theoretically.
I probably won't, but I could.
Yeah.
It's just I'm having a great time with it, because it's like, man, it's exactly what I wanted. They did such a good job at making it feel like you're actually like controlling a Space Marine. They made all of the weapons feel like chunky. Like, they made bolters feel like bolters. The melee combat feels really fun. It's so sick. It's everything about it is so fun, and I'm having a blast. And I describe it as like, and everyone else is describing it like this. It's completely right. It's just God of War, but if you gave Kratos a gun. Though I'm enjoying the combat significantly more than I enjoyed God of War and God of War Ragnarok. Because like, those games are pretty fine. Like, they're good. I just thought the combat got really boring. Like it was just like the combo strings I kind of found meh. But here I'm having a blast because you just have hordes of Tyranids flinging themselves at you. So you just have like these stressful engagements as you're just being harassed endlessly. Because it's literal like massive swarms coming at you as you're just trying to mow them down. And a decent chunk of the objectives are like clear a path or get to this area as like they just are all coming down like the mountainside, and it's amazing. And then the PvP was great. I'm excited for when we have more people playing it.
Yeah, true.
I'm gonna be so pumped.
I'm just hyped that my boys, the Thousand Suns, are getting a really good like mainline entry.
Yeah.
For a part of it. So.
Yeah, they got a main villain.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to meet him. I saw the Bricky. I saw Bricky's like little thing. Yeah. I did. I was listening to that at work. I'm excited to meet him, and because I, as also a Thousand Sun fan, they're like my second. No, they're my second favorite Chaos faction. Yeah. If I want to hear exactly why he was describing him as Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of like the over-the-top acting, I think, is...
Everyone is selling it. It's so good. Yeah, like, I mean, it's also just Palpatine being, like, evil and delighted at just being evil.
Right.
Which is what you gotta do. If you're a Thousand Sun, like, if you're not one of the main characters... Yeah, like, if you're not one of the main character, like, Chaos guys who's like, I'm Chaos, but I'm also a little depressed. I'm angsty Chaos because I was betrayed. You gotta be like, I'm evil, and I love being evil. And I'm so excited to hear him. So far, it's just bugs.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely I'm interested in it as well. As for my news, I've been working out and losing weight. I've lost like, I don't know, like 3 pounds so far in a couple weeks.
Hell yeah.
Which isn't too bad. I'm more actually afraid of putting on more muscle and like being unable to judge how much weight I'm losing. But it's just about looking better in the end anyway and feeling better. And besides the muscle pain, I've been feeling better. So.
Yeah, it's the main judge, honestly, depending on like what you're doing, is that beginner, like that first starter picture you took. That is the best judge, because yeah, it's the rough bit of like, I had the same deal where I 100% in like becoming more active like have lost a decent amount of weight, but one of the problems is muscle builds under the fat, so sometimes you will actually bulk more and look larger. Yeah, and so you have to work differently to like just shape around it, and so it takes time. And because I was warned about that really early about my trainer, of like, hey, you might notice you look like just like you're bloating up. That's not a bad thing. This is just how the body works. Like, do not lose faith. Like, it is working.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I've always been someone who's always been bulkier anyway.
Yeah, same.
Even when I was working out, like in high school. So... but this is the first time I've been able to pretty easily keep on like a low calorie diet. Not low calorie, but like a 500 calorie deficit.
Hell yeah.
And that's like at a 500 calorie deficit, 500 calories every day, you're looking at like typically a pound a week, give or take.
Oh yeah, I mean 500 calorie deficit, and also like even then it's also the tricky bit of like, it's never an exact science.
Yeah,
and which is the rough part, but like that is a great number to hit like consistently.
Yeah. And it changes as you lose weight and as you are more active, like what that calorie deficit should look like. But I'm kind of under the opinion of if I keep to like the same general calorie level, but I work out more, then even if my deficit needs to be higher, it'll just be higher by the grace that I'm working more anyway. So
yeah, and it's also just the grace of as long as you are just doing stuff in your day and not just sitting down all day, like you are just going to you're going to just see improvement, lose weight, as long as you're not, scarfing. Which, I mean, if you're in a calorie deficit, boom, problem solved.
Yeah.
Which is great, because I've solved it only through the fact that I work a job that gives me natural cardio and natural like exercise, because I hate cardio with a passion. It's so boring. I just doing the same thing for so long. It's mind-numbing. But then I do it for a long period over the course of a day. That's better. I meet my step goal every single day at work. I'm so happy about that. And that is the thing that keeps like the fat burning and the cardio going. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't do it. I'm very, very bad at cardio. Everything else, I'm fine. Cardio is my weakness.
I'm not very good at cardio too. The only thing I've been doing so far is just running a mile every time I go to the gym. I get on the treadmill and I just run for essentially a mile, and then I'm good. I'm warmed up and ready to go.
Hell yeah.
Hi, Gabriel. So yeah, it's been a lot, but I've also been finding out that like, man, when you are on a calorie deficit, what you put into your body matters a lot more, and also not putting things in your body matters a lot more. I have a lot of mornings where I'm like, shit, I gotta get a video out. And I get up and I go to work instantly, and then I'm like halfway through the process, I'm like, I got no energy. I'm feeling woozy. I gotta put some calories in me right now, because my body is currently actually on empty, which is a feeling that I've never really had before. But it means that my diet is working, and
Yeah.
I am not putting as many calories in. So it's just weird. It's weird being in a state of like, oh. So what you normally do is typically people have like excess. You usually have excess calories that run into the next day typically. And when you're on a deficit, you don't have that anymore. And so breakfast means way more than it used to. So.
Oh yeah. And I also, one of the bits that's I find super fascinating whenever I looked into it and started doing it is just the fact that it's changing what you eat, and like looking into the fact of like there are foods that exist that serve the purpose of filling you up, but like you look at it, you're like, this food 400 calories, this food 80 total with like a serving, what the fuck, and I'll feel the same. Huh? Like you look into that bit, and because I found it was like through TikTok stuff. There's like a couple really good nutritional accounts that I found, and one of my favorites is this guy who's like Stealth Health is his channel, and he has a cookbook that his entire thing is like, I have created recipes using just different ingredients that look like meals that are unhealthy. They taste like it and they look unhealthy, but it's like, these are the macros, these are everything. You can meal prep with them. Here is like a cheeseburger like pasta dish. Here's like loaded nachos and like buffalo chicken dip, and it's like, but by switching out just a couple things, it's significantly better for you. And it's like, oh my god, oh yeah, that's all you have to do. Just don't buy it from the store, buy a couple of these things, and then like you can make enough for an entire week, and it's significantly lower calorie but more filling. That's nuts. It's nuts that it works like that.
Yeah.
And apparently spinach is the crazy one. Like,
spinach is really good.
You just put it into everything and it just expands. It's crazy. It's just dense, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, what I've been really more taking away is just like, you can eat the things you like. You just eat less, and like it's like you go and you get like pasta, and you're like, okay, I know how many calories are roughly in a cup of pasta. And so rather than like loading your plate up, you just get like two big spoonfuls of pasta, and then you just eat that. And you're like, you know what? I've been eating too much pasta every time I've been like dishing myself up, because this feels fine. And like, I'm also just used getting like, this is my third week essentially into the diet, and second week working out, and I'm just used to the diet now, but it's just something where you just start feeling your body out more, and you start realizing like what's good enough to get you where you need to go, and what's too much. You start feeling it. That's also another thing that's really interesting about a diet is if you're on a calorie deficit, you start craving things that you need more than you used to. So it's just like you'll be doing the same kind of things, maybe eating the same kind of foods, but then you're just like, man, I really could use like a banana right now or something like that. Like my body is craving potassium, or man, I could really use like a hearty vegetable right now, because your body just starts craving those kind of things. And all this while you just pretty much eat mostly the same things, just in smaller amounts. The biggest one, I was fortunate enough, I like just normal, like nothing put on it, naked chicken breasts. I actually overcooked mine a little bit because I like my food like really cooked, not like charcoal, but I like the caramelization that happens when you cook like meat very thoroughly. And so like I just go, oh fuck, we didn't get chicken breasts at the store. I'll just cook like a couple chicken breasts in the, like I bought a food scale so I could weigh the food when I put it in the air fryer. I cook it for like 30 minutes and then it's like boom, and it fills you, and it's like 2 pretty decent sized chicken breasts is like 400 calories, and like it's hard not to get full on that.
Oh yeah, like that, and like if you need a little more, just get yourself a bit of rice and you're fucking set.
Rice?
That's all you need.
Rice is scary. A cup of rice is like 700 calories. Uncooked rice. Cooked rice, it's like 200 calories for a cup of rice. Rice has a ton of calories in it, actually. Actually, most carbs do.
That is true. Its carbs are really the thing. It's just I like the efficiency of chicken rice. But yeah, it is the danger of it. Because chicken is just the one of the better ones to hit, like one of the good proteins, because it's just easy to work with.
It's just a lean meat, is what it is.
It's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also the bit that I also will always hit is it's really such a scam that a lot of people try to purport is the, like, you gotta limit yourself a lot to like you can't eat all of these things, and it's like, well, there's some foods you just shouldn't eat a lot of, because it's not exactly what you eat, it's how much. You can still have the things you like, especially in a diet, because you shouldn't make your diet miserable, because then you're just gonna hate everything and you're gonna hate life, and that's more reason to cheat and like get off of it. You're never gonna stick to something that you despise. If you are sticking to everything, but you're simply doing your life in moderation, you're fucking fine. Like that's normal. Because there's people that are like, never have a candy, no soda, no sugar ever. It's like, you can just like have a soda a day. Like,
right? Yeah, exactly.
That. Just like you get one. Because like look at all that stuff on the back and be like, all right, do you want to trade that for like a thing of food? And a lot of people, and when you actually like take that all into proportion, you're just like, that's a bad deal.
Yeah.
Coke's like 200 calories, and you're like, I could have food.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is it's kind of just like a mix, and also the knowledge that you're not gonna die if you have enough calories in your body. So you know, there's like a lot of other things, but this is not a health stream. We're not here to be healthy. We're here to be nerdy. That's just been my journey lately, and I gotta say, the second anyone just starts doing a little bit for their life, like just counting calories, it's not even about like being on a deficit, but just counting calories, you'll stop overeating, and you'll not like make yourself worse on any given day. So it's just small things that can make your life better, even if you're not trying. Typically, as long as you're like aware of what you're doing, you're just gonna generally start feeling better.
Yeah, it's just honestly, even if you're not ready to prepare yourself for like a full diet, one of the easy things you can do to like just settle yourself in is just pay attention, and that's it. You just pay attention to it, and like that's all you gotta do. It just works just fine.
And then I'm a weirdo, and I'm like, all right, when I started going to the gym and I was on the treadmill and I was like puffing and puffing, I was like, yes, it's working. I'm improving my body right now. Like, that's motivating for me, is just the knowledge that it's working. Like, when I'm super sore, that's like, yes, I did it. I'm working on something.
I've never been able to tap into gym motivation. Like, it's never been an emotion I've been able to tap into. Purely, it's a like, I found things I actually just enjoy doing, and I do it, and it happens to be exercise. And like, and then I also just like feeling like this now, but it's never that, which always was a hurdle with some stuff growing up. But that is good to hear. I'm glad to hear that everything is like really working out for you.
Yeah, well, I've always been highly self-motivated. It's always just been stress and time. Like, feeling like I have no time to do anything I want to do, and then the stress of not doing that. So now that I've kind of like settled in a little bit and the YouTube's been doing really well, it's been a really good opportunity. Plus, I just want to be healthier for my family. So
yeah, it's a big motivation.
But let's start talking about some of the new stuff coming out. Let's talk about Ember. So have you looked into Ember at all?
I looked through the Kickstarter that was set like last night, because I looked at it and I was legit like, when I replied to that in our Discord, I really do like any VTT stuff that tries to blend the line between like video game and tabletop. I granted I wasn't able to like deep dive everything, but I was looking through and it seems really interesting. The tools that it's giving GMs and players, I'm super interested in exactly how it's going to like play out. Also, just the fact it's giving like a lot of assistance tools to the GM, I think is going to be really nice.
Yeah, and this is something that I was thinking about the other day when it came to, like, because there's a lot of grognards out there who are just like, you just want to play a video game. You don't want to play a TTRPG. And it's like, no, that no one is saying that. And I'm sure most people are smart enough to see, oh, is Glass Cannon doing the 5e version? Dang.
That's the shame.
I was actually thinking about going to go check in on it.
Yeah,
to
same.
See what it was like, but that's sad.
I was curious on what the game played like. Like, I'm less interested in the Glass Cannon part. If it's not, I didn't know how 5e works. I want to know how the tools in like their game works.
Yeah, because like, right, the thing is, I understand being a 5e compatibility. Just the thing is, right, it's the dumbest bit of psychology out there ever. It's like the Cosmere RPG, where they're just saying that it's very D&D inspired, or it's like playing D&D 5e, because for some reason there's this weird culture of 5e players who just don't want to learn other systems. So if you just tell them, oh, it's actually just like a 5e port, they're way more likely to play it, even if it really isn't.
The trick, I imagine the Cosmere thing did so well because a lot of people just saw the words D&D and were tricked that it's just a supplement or like a third-party 5th edition thing. But yeah, it's really sad. Like, that's just the method that it works at. Because I'm super interested in what they have. Because, like, looking through their Kickstarter, which I'll link it in the chat too, real quick.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to show an image because there's some parts of it I want to talk about as well. But yeah, share that link.
Because like the art that they have for it is really interesting. Like the world art and the races they have are really cool. So I'm just interested of how a lot of this is just going to be like played out, because the first thing I see when I see a lot of these unique things is like, all right, how is that expressed mechanically?
Yeah, that's a lot of my questions, but kind of circling back to what I was talking about before. So there's a lot of grognards who are very upset about the over integration of VTTs and like what they bring. Like there's some benefit to rolling physical dice or writing on pieces of paper that you can't get through sadly in the case of Ember, you can see in the video on the Kickstarter it has all the 5e classes. So it's not even significantly modified, I guess. Well, we still don't know. Because what I think is really going on is they are still working on the actual system itself. But we'll see. Maybe. Maybe not. I'm not too pressed about that particular part unless the genuinely, like, what you get for the class abilities are one for one the same as D&D. Yeah, I really wish I could zoom in on some of these images that they post.
Honestly, like some of the tools, I at least am also hoping, like, I'm sad that right now it's not going to be open to some other stuff, because I think it'd be really cool if this had a Pathfinder thing. Not even so like we could play in like whatever world they've made, but like I kind of just want these Foundry tools, to be honest.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, of course. And that's the thing, right? That's what makes me think that they're not genuinely going to make the whole system just a rip of 5e. 5e is probably just the stuff they already have done because it's already a thing, you know?
It makes sense, because like that's just that's a lot of work, because also just like with Pathfinder especially, there's a lot of stuff you have to work with Pathfinder, because the game is so good, it has so much content. But like, yeah, it's, I can understand that one specifically is just, hey, we have time and budget that's not gonna allow for this, at least right now. It'd be cool if that happened, because I think a lot of people, including myself, I'd be hyped. The stuff they have is cool. I would prefer it in a better rule set.
But anyway, back to my point. So a lot of people out there who are not excited about like over integration or ease of access when it comes to like VTTs. There's just people out there who just hate the idea of VTTs in general.
Which is goofy, yeah.
And to those people, I say, what the fuck are you talking about? It's something that's so unnecessary to draw a divide in. And the thing is, and this is what I was thinking the other day, there is definitely a level of freedom that you can only have with like a pen and paper TTRPG like thing, where you can add elements like Fabula Ultima, for instance, or any system that implements a edit feature. That's something you can do really only in a pen and paper situation, because you're not pre-establishing an environment that the players are looking at to add things into, really. But on the flip side to all of that, I feel like the pen and paper, people have a wide variety of like levels of imagination, what they can visualize and how they see the scene or like what's going on. And because of that, there's clashes in like what someone thinks is happening in the scene and what isn't. And there's people who just can't imagine what's going on at all, and so are really don't know what to do or how to move in the scene. And with a virtual tabletop, I feel like you eliminate some of those problems by just giving people something that's more tangible to like interact with. Like, giving something that inspires people visually, or like stimulates them visually, or something they can move a piece around into, sometimes that's way better for people to like actually get immersed in the story, because they have something to go off of when it comes to like basing their imagination off. And this is why I feel like a lot of people are they're not really seeing the fact that there is a difference in actual like levels of imagination that people have. And not only that, but honestly, there are some systems out there that really could use just some cleaning up with an automated system that does all the math and stuff for you. Shadowrun's a really good example.
Yeah, a lot of older games, I'll be honest, work really nice with just automation, because, like, or even, like, honestly, even a game that, like, after I've rolled the dice, and, like, I know the system, I know how it plays, I've rolled the dice hundreds of times, I know what's happening. If there is a tool that is available that does it for me, and it saves, like, the couple of seconds, sick. Like that one mod we have on Foundry, the one that literally turns it into a CRPG where I click on the enemy and it does it, and it does the damage. That's so cool. I love it. I love that so much. It's like my favorite mod we have, because it just it cleans things up. I think it makes things quicker. I find it really fun. It plays the animations. It's sick. That's one of the reasons I really like Foundry. And it keeps me, like, more interested, too. You see the dice rolling at it. So, like, I don't know. I agree with that a lot. Sometimes, like, yeah, there's a feeling to rolling the dice, the tactile experience. The tactile experience of doing the same thing 1,000 times in a row, when a robot could do it for you faster.
I mean, like, I like rolling dice, and I don't mind sitting at a table, and, like, there's definitely a different experience of in-person tabletop versus
there is
not. But the problem is, I would hazard a guess most people do not play in a physical, like, in-person tabletop experience. It's just really hard. And with
it's hard, and people are also just like, people separate too, and like move away, and the idea of like, we basically got ourselves now in a situation where normally it'd be a thing like, man, well, we had our tabletop group, I guess we can never play again. That was like a perfect group.
Right.
And now we can just be like, well, no, and keep playing. And if someone was like, no, it's not the same. It ain't the same, we can't. Like, no. I don't even think a lot of people are saying that. I think at most a lot of people are saying it's a fundamentally worse experience. I disagree. I think they're just trade-offs between like both versions. There's always just going to be like differences that both like a virtual tabletop experience and a physical one can give you. It's like, I think just the acting and like role play that you can do in a physical space is going to be different than a virtual one. But then like the tools available in a virtual tabletop experience are just astronomically nicer and better.
Yeah. Well, you know, and then there's also this hardline thought of like, video games make people dumb because now they don't have to do the math for themselves. And it's just like, so what? Who cares?
Yeah. So I like, yeah, who cares? And even then, like, what if I've done the math a lot? I know how it's done. Do I need to keep doing it?
Well,
like,
and that's not their argument. Their argument isn't people
argument.
who is already good at math doing it. It's people who aren't good at math who refuse to get better. Because
maybe
I
want
met
to
people
play a game and I don't want to deal with, say for example, Mutants and Masterminds weird fucking point arrays that confuse me, like, inherently the moment I start reading it. But I love the game so far. However, the math scares me.
Yeah, well, you know, when you start getting into fractions, it starts getting a little weird. Even though it's not fractions, but more like a point multiplier is a better way to look at it. But anyway, so yeah, it's something where for the people who don't want video games and TTRPGs to be the same thing, no one is asking for that. No one is asking for an RPG video game instead of a TTRPG. The whole fun of TTRPGs is the act of role playing and getting in character, talking to NPCs, and doing all that kind of stuff. But what we want is for the combat to go faster because it's all done by the press of a button, you know. We want the combats to feel easier to strategize in because we can visually see everything and not some really shitty map drawn by hand at the last second because the GM didn't prepare for like a certain event that you did. You know, like there's a lot of situations where the VTT just gives to Tabletop things that you just can't like in person do. And that's why let's take a look at Ember here because I want to talk about some of the features that they are planning on implementing. I have a clip. Let's see, stream stuff right here. Make this nice and big. Alright, let's center this up. Oh darn, it is behind me. Let's do this. There you go. Alright. So here's what they're claiming this system is going to do. Epic main story with years of gameplay. I'm a little dubious, but at the same time, I do know campaigns take forever to do anything. So that might not be actually inaccurate. Colossal open world with over 25,000 hexes. That's pretty cool. I'm interested in what's in each of these hexes because is it a world that's a slog to get through because each hex has something in it? Or is there nothing in most hexes and each hex is just a representation of space on the map? Elegant character creation process. It does look interesting. The custom token maker looks really cool.
I was really interested by that, yeah.
The one problem I have with it is you're always going to be then limited by the token maker for what your character looks like on screen, rather than just like put in art you found or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You can't like, unless, I hope they have like an importer as well.
Yeah. Over 80 interactive and animated area maps. I mean, that's just generally cool as a feature. So that's something that like area maps to have to just swap for playing the game is really good. 80 though is a number that you'll get through after like a year or so playing maybe. And what if you run into many areas of the same type? Because one of the problems with this kind of thing is like an area map, which I'm assuming is their like battleground maps. I can actually go take a quick look real quick. Yeah, it's their battlefield maps. Like, the problem is like 80 maps. It sounds like a lot, but like, what if your game just takes place a lot in like forest areas and in dungeon areas?
You just, yeah, you run through it because you're also maybe a bunch of like combat like players. You're just getting in combat a lot.
Well, the point is like, how many maps of each type are we talking about? Because 80 maps is okay, but it's like, but how many of these are like forest maps? Is there only 10? Because that would be a lot of the total percentage, right? But then you only have 10 different maps for the many different forest encounters you may have.
How many till you have to start repeating is a great question to ask.
So, you know, and to be fair, it's not like I'm guiltless when it comes to reusing maps. I do it all the time. But when people are paying into this feature, essentially, that's where my question comes up. The Vista system for visual storytelling definitely is interesting, though the problem I find with this is like, is it is it like, oh, this is a ball scene, here you go, you know? Like, what if there's just not a vista for your unique scenario that's coming up? I don't know. This part is very not well, like, shown. It just looks like there's different backgrounds, different characters that can talk on it or whatever. I haven't seen the video yet, so I'm actually not sure.
That's something that there's another VTT that was doing that. It was the pixel art one. I forget the name of it. It was like I think it's Dimension something. Like it had Dimension in the name, but like the whole thing was like pixel art and was trying to be like you are basically creating a little video game for your players to walk around in. Because they did the same thing. Like you basically created a little like vista area for like pixel art characters to like walk around
One more
and like talk.
multiverse?
Yes, that's it. One more multiverse. I think it's how that kind of worked there. Which
Rough.
it is dead now. Sadly. It was very interesting. It just like it seemed like it was very ambitious, and it was a great project, but I do not know how many people were actually using it.
Yeah. Yeah, and when that, I mean, that's just the startup TTRPG scene in general. It's really hard to get funding for anything, so we'll have to see for sure. But I'm definitely interested in, like, because I've had the same thought, like, what if there's this thing where there's this background and then you can have it where the characters pop up unseen like an RPG game and talk to each other, you know? That's something that I've thought about before. So I'm definitely interested, but I'm keeping a level of skepticism because I feel it's healthy, especially because anything that overpromises in the TTRPG field is always usually not what people expect or want, because it's hard. A lot of it is hard. That's true, yeah. And to be fair, like, they've apparently been making this since 2022, so it's already been in production for a couple years, and I feel like all they need to do now is, honestly, the Kickstarter is probably more of just like a backfunding thing to like pay everyone for all the work they've already done, and maybe to like add some extra things into it production time wise. So
yeah, like the basics and like everything is in a decent order, but they want to finish it up, get extra things there, show off the work, like, which is a good state for your project to be in.
Yeah,
and it's a great state for you to launch a Kickstarter in.
Yeah. Hopping back on over to this list here, the Codex to chronicle your achievements. This, which is
that just a journal? A journal tab?
Yeah, it just seems to be like a journal tab.
Which, I mean, if it was like a cool presentation to it, hell yeah.
It automatically tracks important events, so you can always recall the detail of your game and choices you've made. So there might be a system where the GM is just like, what choices the players made, they click it, and it gets added to like their journal. That's what happens. That might be cool.
I'm curious how that's gonna play out, and like I'm mainly because I'm curious how a process of like a VTT knowing that a decision was made. What is the setup for that? I am interested though.
Yeah, I definitely think the DM hits a button that like indicates what choice they made in the scenario.
It would have to be a thing that is actually like planned and set up.
Well, and so this is the thing, right? So the Codex set. So when you take it in the context that they have an epic main story with years of gameplay, that means it might be a thing that's already set up, events that are already set up that have dialogue connected to them. And so when the players doing this narrative, this storyline they've made, make a decision based on a thing, there probably is like a prompt that you hit. And so the GM doesn't have to write a bunch of stuff because it's for their unique campaign. And then the GM can probably write their own styles of prompts and like choices that can also add to the codex as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's fair. I forgot that, you know, it's got basically like a story mode, like campaign thing.
I mean, then the GM just has to make more things, I suppose.
Yeah, that was also my second thought of what happens if the players go off the rails, which, I mean, there's the push and pull of it. Like, hopefully you got players that aren't being too shitty about it, but also, like, I am genuinely curious of, like, how a thing like that addresses, is there a button you press if, for a neither,
Yeah.
if, like, your options are A, B, and C of, like, players do this, and then it updates. And then you're like, I have a problem, game. They did none of that.
Maybe.
I'm so curious.
It is question again. Like the GM can always add things as well, but I also feel like, for the most part, it's bad to always assume the worst of a situation or what player actions are, because one contract you sign when you start, like especially an APG, right, is your characters are interested in this, right? You guys want to play this adventure path, so please keep that in mind with your character actions, because there's no point in doing an adventure path if your characters are just going to go completely off the rails right out the gate. Maybe they do some things that are unscripted, but typically people are pretty knowledgeable, because like we've been subjected to storytelling for as long as we've been alive. Literally all media, like movies, TV shows, cartoons, all are narratives. And so we just pick up on narrative points pretty easy because we've been subjugated to it our whole life. So it's something that I feel like isn't that big of a problem, but there's probably also just always a tool to write your own stuff in, if necessary.
I imagine. It's just a thing I hear, and I'm like, I really want to see how it works, because like I immediately start thinking of like, I'm curious when I hear like it's an automated thing, it automatically does this. I'm like, God, I want to see how it handles edge cases. That sounds really funny.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in most places in TTRPGs, that's usually the GM will figure it out. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But we'll hop back on over. Then there's the dynamic and cinematic audio engine. I mean, audio engines are not new to Tabletop. There's Sirenscape and all kinds of things. So a good feature to have, especially if it's already integrated in, but nothing special. Imaginative fantasy setting and sandbox. I am genuinely interested because I want a really good fantasy setting. We'll see how fantasy it goes, though.
Some of the races I'm curious about, because one of them looks kind of like a little, at least magic tech-y, kind of. Well, more just like it looked like a magic being wearing metal stuff.
The Zeph?
Yes, which I'm super into. Like I'm very intrigued. I hope it's a super sick like setting.
Yeah, so what game of VTT are we talking about? We're talking about Ember, the new Kickstarter by Foundry, and they're already a couple years in development. And I believe they're planning on releasing this next year as well, right? Let's see, there is a thing for it. There's an AF. There's a fact for it, was there not? Maybe there wasn't. Oh no, here it is. 2025, yeah. December next year. So, we will see. But yeah, so my problem is I feel like a lot of fantasy settings go super fantasy, and then it's just stuff is always explained or hand waved by it's fey magic or blah blah blah. There's no grounding or general like rules, and that makes settings very hard to like really immerse in, for me at least, because it's like I want to figure this thing out. I want to figure out how this thing works. And then the answer is, it's magic. Don't ask questions. And it's like, that's not fun. I would prefer something that has more of like a foundation that you can look into. Even if it's not that deep, as long as it generally makes sense, it's something that I would overall say would be better. So I'm very curious to see about their setting. They have a lot of cool art. They obviously really, really care about the setting. It looks really interesting and super fun. So I genuinely do hope they put a lot of love and care into this setting, but we'll have to see. Still trying to get better understanding Pathfinder 2e, so I'm not sure I'm looking to jump into a new setting. Well, good thing is it's not going to be out until December next year, so you have over a year to figure it out. Let's see here. We also have unique playable ancestries and cultures. Unique ancestries is such a nothing burger nowadays. It's like, what is unique? We have literally in every game, there's always some unique thing. I guess they're saying not dwarves and elves or gnomes.
Which, to be fair, as I'm looking through, yeah, I'm not seeing, like, I see a thing that it could maybe call a dwarf, but even then, like, they don't look like stereotypical dwarves. And then everything else, I'm like, this at least looks very, like, unique to this.
I guess. I don't know. Most of them are like, okay, let's have a human, only slightly longer ears or shorter, or actually an animal person. So, I mean, cool, I guess. I wouldn't have made that one of my selling points. Also, the Draken are straight up just hour off from Final Fantasy 14. The Korak look interesting, and I love the art they have for the human. He looks badass.
I'm super into the Fej, I think is probably how you say that.
Yeah, the Fej.
They look sick.
And the Seth.
I'm super into the Seth.
The Warren also kind of look interesting. But like the Kivar, like let me show y'all a picture of the Kivar real quick. It's just a dude but gray. So, I'm not sure exactly how I'm supposed to feel about this guy behind me here. It's just a dude, but he's gray. That's it. Sometimes you just want to be a gray dude.
I do agree with Dead Phoenix earlier of like, honestly, the way I can judge if they're unique and interesting is going to be a lot more of if I can see their mechanics and, like, I guess, also for me, just who they are. Like, I want to know more about them, like, their lore a bit before I judge, because, like, I think there's a lot of art of them that I think looks sick. I'm super interested already. Then I want to, read about a bit of it and make that judge. Because I think already they're making a pretty fun jump of, like, we're not doing the standard, just like we got elves and dwarves and dragon people. We're doing the D&D stuff, which I think is already a good step because that'd be boring. And so that's step one. But yeah, I think a more interesting decision would have been like, let's actually show something other than just like here's a picture, make assumptions about what they are.
Yeah, I don't know, so we'll see. Okay, let's look at what's up next here. Solar, lunar, and seasonal calendar system. Now this is actually pretty hype. So this particular system they're talking about here, they have the overworld map that has the 25,000 hexes, right? That map has a fully integrated calendar system, so at nighttime the map will switch over to a night mode, and during different lunar parts of the lunar cycle, other features of the map will change as well. That's legitimately really, really hype.
I'm down for that. That's sick.
Especially something that gives that sense of like the player's time in the game is meaningful, where your characters can't just skip a month and like nothing happened. It's more just like, oh, the moon cycle is changing soon. You know, the forest of gems is gonna have that one rare boss encounter or whatever, you know. Like something to interact with the actual thing. Yeah, and since it's automated, that's also really, really cool. So this is something I'm genuinely hyped for, and will make me want to explore the map, because I want to see like what's going on, what happens in these areas during these particular cycles. So that's legitimately really, really cool.
I also am I'm super interested in that concept. I think if you have a thing like that, do that thing in some RPGs where there's specific time of day bosses and like encounters, just naturalistically, if it's all tracked automated, like have that be a thing. It'd be so cool.
Well, Cole, you'll be fine. No one's asking you to do everything perfectly. Remember that. You just gotta do the best you can, take it one step at a time. Unless you're trying to run a session every single day, you have tons of time to prep and get into games. And I agree. The fact that this is designed by people who made Foundry, which I love Foundry. We've been using it a lot. It's got some jankiness, and it's mostly supported by third-party content creators. I'm very curious to see what they do here. So, yeah, the calendar, really cool. And it not only that, but it makes the map more visually interesting to players, which I feel like is something that can make people more immersed in the world, seeing what's going on, doing all that kind of stuff. So I'm very, very interested in that aspect. Let's see here. Non-linear quests and consequential choices. This is probably, again, mostly related to their actual campaign that they've made. I'm very curious. It's very easy to make. Did they mention the event system? So they have an event system here that's mentioned that isn't on this particular map thing here. And the consequential system looks interesting. It allows you to essentially set up a flow chart of events of something going on. So players take different kinds of actions, different types of events happen. An easy way to, I think, set everything up in a visually interesting way. But this is more of an organization piece in the end. So, while I like it, and it definitely adds a way to set up a chart more easily, a flow chart essentially, I feel like for the most part, this is just a part of using the system, which does sound interesting. It'd be something I would never use though, personally. For me, I already just keep kind of like a general log of what's going on in the game in my head, and I'm pretty good at making the players interact in the way I want. So there's not really a worry of players choosing different choices usually. Sometimes it happens, but that's usually more of a fun moment than it is like, oh no, I didn't plan for this part of the flow chart. So interesting for the people who want to use it. I definitely think, especially if they have these kind of charts for their pre-made campaign, I think that's really cool. I think it's really interesting.
Two, I was scrolling through the actual like info for stuff. Well, I can give two little concerns immediately are answered.
Okay.
The Vista thing, the idea of like, well, what if there aren't vistas for it?
Yeah,
it's not like pre-made images. You make your own Vista. So you just create your own image.
But again, that's still limited by what assets they have available.
Yeah.
So
at least it's more broad than like, here, pick from a list of pictures. And then the same deal with like the maps and like locations and stuff. They have tile and map creators. like in there. So you can make, if there aren't enough hexes for you, you can make your own.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like that's the thing, right? Is I'm always just curious about like what's there that can make it easy for the GM, because if their answer is just do it yourself, it's just like, well, yeah, I would have done that already. So, you know.
Yeah, and then it's like, what am I paying for?
Right.
Which I agree, but at least like I saw those and I was like, oh, that's a lot nicer than what I think could be assumed from just these blurbs. So I read that and I'm immediately like, oh, okay, yeah, I assume that these are just pre-made stuff. The Vista Creator looks pretty nice though, at least from that like little
yeah,
screenshot they showed.
I definitely think it'll be really good. It's just my question is always just like when I try to run a game and I want to give you guys an image, it's always a struggle for me to find the exact kind of image I want, because it's not something so simple as like a room in a dungeon. It's like, I want a room in a dungeon that belongs to a necromancer.
And then like even more if we were using this, could this thing provide you that?
Yeah. Because legitimately, what would make me happy is give me a button that says randomized procedural dungeon. Done. And go from there. Because then I can always just, like, drop in an asset I need. Like, oh, this should be a perfect room for the necromancer's room. So let me just have a thing, you know. So I'm not gonna snub my nose up at something that it definitely makes it much easier than what we currently got. And I want something that is very easy to do as a GM, where you don't have to do a lot of the manpower yourself. So, you know, I'm game. I really want some of this stuff. I'm just voicing some of my concerns. But the thing is, but all the stuff we're talking about here, let's talk about the last thing and then I'll wrap up my thoughts. So there's also the token maker with infinite variation. Infinite variation seems, it's probably effectively infinite. Like, there's no way you could do it with the time you have. But infinite variation is a highly scrutinizable thing. But the cool thing about their tokens that they're making is their tokens can change color, change gear, and I guess there's a lot of base subtypes. So I'm curious about that as well. But that one, like, I'll have to see what infinite. I don't believe it's infinite. I don't care if you're talking about every pixel difference on the color wheel being part of your infinity. If it's just a rat person, just every color of the rainbow, it's still just one rat person. It doesn't matter if you can change their color. So I'm not impressed by infinitely. I would be very impressed by a base like image for each of the tokens. So, and I haven't looked at any of the videos or anything like that. I also agree. Yeah, they're the top-down token style, which I'm also not a particular fan of because it's really hard to get details. To crop a face onto a token border is just fine. I think is fine, and that's something I'd probably prefer more anyway.
Or even like my favorite, which is the style you can get from Retrograde Mini.
That's
I like
also
the side,
good, yeah.
the side bit like Mini where it's just full body.
The full profile.
I'm also not a fan of top down.
So, you know, I genuinely speaking, this whole list behind me here is really cool. Despite criticisms I had, what I really like about this is it is bringing a lot of flavor and life to a TTRPG. And so this raises the question of, are we going to start seeing RPGs that are going to be just coming with their own VTT or VTT setups for like another more popular VTT? Is that a good thing? Because that means more development time is put into VTT assets rather than like developing a game book and everything. I don't know, in all honesty. I really would like to see more digital assets for tabletop games. I feel like it only enhances the gaming experience.
More stuff specifically made for this. I think it's honestly a fair idea and not something I think will be far off if we flash forward like 10 years. The idea of something directly made for a digital set of play, like a game that is directly made only for VTT play. I think it's a realistic thing to expect.
Yeah.
And
well, and I mean,
I'm curious how much of the norm that could become.
I think it will just become the standard because we're in an age where the average distance you live from your friends is further and further away, like with every year. And I mean, why make things based on the idea of you can only play it with your friends in your hometown, right? So
it's the horrifying dystopian version of this, where if Hasbro catches on, they do this, there's a very real chance we see D&D 6th edition with a battle pass.
Right. I mean, there's definitely going to be bad ways it's going to be done. And if it's going to be any company, it's going to be Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, we're going to see a bad version. And we're going to see a great version. Like, there's just going to be companies that are going to do that. I am morbidly curious of the worst version possible, Hasbro. Please show me, just so I can like look at it and kind of laugh.
Yeah, right. Because I'm not playing D&D, so I don't care.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use it.
And to be fair as well, I don't think that even if we do move into a more digital landscape, we're not going to have physical copies. Because physical media matters a lot to people. I think that's very evident with like saving games and just tabletop culture in general is kind of based on physical media, dice, minis, you know, getting a badass game table for when your friends come over. So I don't think we're going to be losing anything with this kind of more digital age. But I definitely think it's going to introduce a new level of interactivity that's more appealing, especially to people nowadays. I mean, to be honest, it's like, I know I've had the thought before of, oh my god, I love Arkham Asylum or Arkham Horror, but setting up and tearing that game down takes an hour. It's miserable. It would be so great if I could just hop on to Tabletop Simulator and play it there, where the system puts all the pieces back itself, you know?
Yeah, you got a little robot that picks up your toys for you. It's so nice. And then you have that for just other things. I think it's honestly that's the fair way it's probably gonna go. Is we're going to see just, if things are going to be created for VTTs, we're going to see stuff. And honestly, Cosmere's kind of doing this already.
Yeah.
Like with how much it's already like marketing super heavily to being released for like Demiplane and Roll20. And the stuff it's already showing off for Demiplane looks really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to have Foundry support on launch too, apparently, which I'm hyped for. But like, if we have games created a lot stronger for VTTs, I think there's a very real chance that we're going to see games drop on launch with just VTT support. And then if these companies are making more money, then we could see Roll20 published, Foundry published is a reality, maybe. Or another one. Who knows?
Who knows?
I think that'd be cool. That'd be a cool reality. We're not going to see the loss of physical media. I think the worst case scenario that could possibly happen, and that's like a far off reality, is the idea of like, it becomes the idea of like a niche collector hobby of having the physical versions of stuff. Like, here's the more expensive physical release that you're not super expected to actually use and play. It's more just like, here's this for people if you want to have an extra way to spend money. And like, it's another method of the company making money, but here's the real product for use is the PDF stuff. All the collector's edition, which is just a physical copy. That's worst case. I don't think they're ever going to stop printing stuff. And I think it's a fine reality, to be honest, if it's just like we have games created with stronger VTT support on launch. And like, that's just a stronger thing. I'm down for that. Because that's just kind of the way we're going. Like you already said, it's friends live farther away from each other on average. People move. And like, if friends move and we're a great group, I don't want to separate the group.
Right.
I want to keep playing our campaign. I don't want to stop it just because like someone had to go off to school. Someone got a great job like a couple states over. That doesn't mean we have to like split everything up. We can keep going. We can just use a different thing.
Honestly, to me, I think the worst case scenario is there's going to be some smaller companies that are going to make a purely digital VTT for a game that might be really, really good. That's the thing that's my biggest concern. And I don't think that's going to be super common.
No.
Just because I feel like we're not at the stage yet where we've developed TTRPGs to be so immaculate yet. I feel like TTRPGs still need to go through some new like rule upsets, some new games that bring in new types of game rules before we get to a really actually good TTRPG like era where every game is like really good because it's based on the same kind of bones. It's kind of like the Souls-like era of video games, because like Souls-like is fun. As much as everyone kind of complains about Souls-like games nowadays, Souls-like kind of reinvented the action RPG genre in a way, making for a much more slow-paced, intense, and difficult game style. We still have the old style of action RPGs. I mean, I'm playing Black Myth Wukong right now, which is a super fun game, but it really is much of a button masher with just a little bit of difficulty spiced in there. And I don't feel like Tabletop's quite there yet. A lot of Tabletop-like systems are still a little archaic, a little bit like... D20 is, I think, bad. I think
D20 feels like it's being used because it's always been used.
Yeah, it's not because I don't think a D20 can be good, but the thing is that they're like, we don't want to have bloated numbers in our game, so we use small numbers, and we use a D20. It's just like, so something my character is good at, I can do 60% of the time, maybe 65% of the time. That feels bad. That feels incorrect. If character...
it's relating it down to 5e, how 5e feels a lot of the time, when even like Baldur's Gate hits this a lot, actually, if you like pay attention to the numbers it throws at you. Even harsher if you play on like, I mean, if you play on a higher difficulty, obviously. If you play on stuff, is the amount of times that the balance of 5th edition, or just D&D, is like, in D20 games, is like, alright, can you make a coin flip?
Right.
And it's like, that's, I mean, on average, I don't know, will I make a 50-50 chance? Like, that doesn't feel like a game too much. It's like, I don't know, it's not great if your average is like, your average checks for everything is a 50-50. Or even if it feels like that.
Right. I feel like if you want to have room for error, a character who's genuinely good at a thing should have a 90% success rate. Where it's the very rare 1 in 10 cases where you run into a problem. And even that, I don't necessarily agree with. I feel like if a character is good at something, they should do it almost every time. Unless it's a situation where the thing they're doing in question is exceptionally difficult even for trained people. That's something that I can allow. But like, if I'm playing a lock-picking thief, I don't want a coin flip every time I'm picking a lock on the door. I want to go in and be like, all right, I can pick this lock, and only sweat when it's like, okay, this is a master lock, you know, with 25 tumblers and all this kind of stuff in it. And you'd be like, oh, that sounds really hard. I'm good at this, but I don't know if I'm that good at that, you know?
Yeah, if I built the lockpicking lawyer in Pathfinder, I want to be able to pop shit open immediately, but like it shouldn't be a consistent like I'm still failing often just because it's constant. I guess just constant chance of that failure. But Pathfinder's at least better about it.
Yeah,
But
kind of.
I see exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and not early game Pathfinder though. Early game Pathfinder
No.
can be a little frustrating, but
I think early on you should obviously like you built your character up, but you're still working your way up. But the idea that like a really high level character is like I've slain gods, I've literally broken into like I've broken into heaven itself and stolen these divine artifacts. Let me take a crack at this safe of a mayor in this small town. That one.
yeah.
Dang.
Well, to be fair, in Pathfinder, you could still succeed potentially, depending on how high you roll.
Which is why it's better in Pathfinder. Pathfinder just does it a lot better, which is great. I prefer that system. It's really funny in like D&D of just like, nope, that's an instant fail. Like, sorry. It's like, well, dang, that's really something.
Yeah. Well, also, I feel like GMs just need to be more okay setting DCs below player failure, like below a point where your players can't fail. Because like if they are in a town of a small town and there's a mayor with like a steel safe or something like that, or an iron safe, and you're like a level 15 character, you should just be like, pop. I didn't even blink. I already opened it, you know?
Yeah, I see that a lot. There's the GM tactic where I see like, well, I need to make things a challenge, so I'm going to provoke checks often.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can just not have them make a check for something. It's like, your character's very good at this thing.
Yeah.
Then you just need to not ask for a roll sometimes. Many times, honestly. Or literally exactly that. Just like, character's very good. It seems like they're very hyped to roll, and like, I haven't asked for a roll for a bit. I'll stress them out. I'm gonna set a DC like 2 because there's no way logically they fail this, and so like I'm just gonna give them a little taunt of like, oh, can you do it? Yeah, you do it. And it's like, yeah, you give them that little fun like in those rolls, but exactly that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't scale everything like that to your players sometimes.
So, you know, when looking at like the future and having more of these kind of pre-made like adventures or a tabletop game that has like full digital assets and full digital like integration, I think we're in a good spot for that right now. I feel like that is the next step, because even if people think that's overly casual or it's overly like handholdy in some ways, so what? Let's have more people play tabletop and get invested in tabletop. You know, the people who are going to like more serious tabletop will find and play that regardless of the handholdy stuff that's out there anyway. You know, like I especially with like this whole thing recently that I didn't notice until I made a tweet about it, where people just call rules like games actually more difficult than normal tabletop like crunch. I started noticing that more and more after I made a tweet about it, and it's like, Daggerheart, I think the idea was to make it easier so anyone could play, but I feel like they realized that it was more difficult for people to make choices when there wasn't an easy solution on things than if they just had a harder system that coded more answers into the game. And
you actually need guardrails sometimes. Like you can't let them out in the wild. You need stuff there to play against. You need the rules. And because it's like, I remember I saw that tweet and it was exactly what we talked about on Tabletop. It's the good point of like, man, rules light is cool and all, but no, you hear that and you're like, it's so much easier. No. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the same realization they all made. That's very true.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the thing where I'm at this stage of understanding tabletop more, where it's like, we need more video game like tabletops. Because the one way you can get around the difficulty of crunch in your game is automation. It's no longer crunch when the players themselves aren't the ones doing the math. You know what I mean? So you can have a very deep and complex system that's really easy when you have when you have like a site that's doing all the math for you already.
Yeah, if you give out the option for people to have those tools when they want to, because there's just always going to be that moment of like, this person wants to play or this person wants to be part of this, but they just don't. They're just like new and they need like that help or that boost. Boom. And then other people, they're like, I don't want the training wheels. I'm going to jump right into that math and like learn how everything works. Then yeah, just don't use the tool.
Yeah,
it's easy. Yeah, it's always better to just have the thing. Just more options is a good thing. I see people fight against that for some reason, of like just being mad that an option exists. And I always think of the Doom Eternal tweet of you're in charge of the buttons you press. You don't have to use it, man.
It's so funny, and the thing is though is it's gatekeepers, like 9 times out of 10. It's people who don't want tourists in their hobby, and
I don't like.
And it's like I don't understand how anyone can look at more people spending money on a product you love and think it's a bad thing. Like, I get it, right? For the people who liked Pathfinder First Edition, they look at Second Edition as the game that killed their game because they're no longer getting First Edition content.
It's always the stuff of like, it's people who view it as the moment my hobby goes mainstream, the trend is now that it turns into something that like isn't what I loved and it's dead now. So like my hobby becoming mainstream kills it. Therefore, the only way for my hobby to stay what I enjoy is to keep it from going mainstream.
Right.
That's 40K's problem right now.
Oh, yeah, especially.
40K has that problem a lot of it's people fighting and being like, well, we can't stop demanding this of the company. It's like, people aren't doing that. Also, they're not listening. Like, they don't listen to the customers like that. They don't care. Historically, Games Workshop doesn't care. And then they're like, to make up for it, they make up conspiracy theories. Like, fully made up. Just like their source, some guy on 4chan saying, trust me. And like, they're like, yep, that makes sense to me. That's just what people do to like protect themselves for the idea of like, well, I can now protect myself from the idea that my hobby is in my brain being destroyed. The thing I love is dying in front of me. It's like, it's okay, but whatever, man. It's goofy. To them, it's a real threat, but it really is never.
Well, I mean, okay, I'll disagree with that part a little bit. Sometimes it is. Sometimes a company will design a game around more accessibility and will remove some of the crunch and some of the stuff. Like D&D 5e is actually that kind of example where they are trying to remove more and more of the crunch in the game as much as possible. Even talking about possibly removing classes and making classes who use weapons just a subclass of a basic fighting class, you know?
Yeah, D&D is that point of like, if you were a fan of older D&D editions, 100%. So it's the people who argue that like, I don't know, Star Wars, because Star Wars got popular, therefore it's now destroyed. And it's fair enough, I guess, because it's just, that's the nature of when capitalism takes over your thing and they want more money extracted from it. But also it's just like inevitably your hobby will attract people, and that's just a thing.
Yeah.
But also bringing new blood into your hobby is normal, and that's healthy for it. You want more people coming in, so then the opportunity of the people creating it can keep working on it. Well, if it stays super niche, it also could just hard die. Though I guess to them it also means that it stays hard stuck at the thing they want, I guess.
Yeah, so the thing is, right, is there is some legitimate cases where a game changes in a way that the core audience doesn't like, to make it more accessible or more, less janky, when some people like the jank. I mean, the Oracle in Pathfinder 2nd Edition got that treatment recently, and that was kind of a division. And so the thing is, though, all these gatekeepers or whatever, just know, you don't own the game. You don't own the property. You can't tell them what they can and can't do. And on top of that, when we're talking about people entering a niche rather than like a particular game, then the conversation, we're talking about two different things. Like, when I'm talking about people getting into tabletop, like I said before, tabletop needs D&D. D&D is great for introducing a lot of people to the hobby who just weren't interested in it before. And so I'm not talking about, new people ruined D&D. Like, I'm talking about new people are coming in and are being interested in tabletop, and so companies now are investing more and more money to make tabletop more interesting to more types of people, which is a good thing. And it's something that we should all be happy about. If you are upset because your game got changed because a company made it more accessible and you're in a group of people who preferred it the way it was before, that's where Kickstarters come up to make the game more like what they love. That's what made Pathfinder start in the first place, was D&D kind of deviating from what they wanted. And so Pathfinder got made because people liked it the older way more. And here we are. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is currently my favorite game to play.
That also happened with actually Warhammer fantasy in AOS, because there's a game that dropped like a year ago or something. This fantasy war game that is essentially, it plays like the old Warhammer Fantasy with like just a little bit more modern, like fixed up rule set, designed by some of the original designers of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, because the game is dead and like not coming back.
Yeah.
So they were just like, well, let's just make something for the people who want this and us who also want it back. And it does really well. The problem is it's niche because it's not Warhammer. So like, just keep an eye out for projects like that.
So it's like, for sure, some things you like about your game might go away or die or get removed. But that's, even if that wasn't the case, Warhammer has been niche forever, and it hasn't even been mainstream popular for all that long. Probably a handful of years at this point now. People were complaining about new edition changes all the time.
Every new edition gets some complaints, and like, the only time I'd ever be like, some of the new edition change complaints are honest and like fair is like now. But like, yeah, it's just every single time it happens, because it's the I always consider it, there's some nerd, actually it just happens with anything, to be honest, but there's a lot of times a thing I see in a lot of nerdy stuff where people join a hobby, they join a game, and then they're like, perfect, this is the place, I like it like this is great. And then they change it, like a new edition, they're like, what? Huh? I liked it, great, here, those old changes to the game, I know we're like 6th edition right now or whatever. 7th edition though, you're still updating it? That's not okay. I wanted you to pause when I got into it. And then there's a person who says that same thing for 5th edition, 4th edition, 3rd edition. It's just, I don't know. It's not every single person, but it happens. Warhammer's got a lot of people like that.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing is, people are under this idea that something they like, the game they play, whatever, is just going to stay the same thing forever, which is never the case. And if your game dies, then someone else is going to come up and probably do a new thing that honestly probably just improves what you liked anyway, because they know what you like and worked upon it and expanded upon it anyway. So new people in the end probably just makes better versions of the things you already like. We're talking about new stuff coming in the TTRPG field, Oi Man. Specifically, the growing trend of tabletops moving towards being integrated with VTTs. So, you know, gatekeepers don't know what they're talking about because they don't know what makes their games good in the first place. Sure, the thing and exactly how it was goes away. Everything does in time. It doesn't matter if your hobby remained niche or not. What matters is more attention and honestly more accessibility for the kind of game you like, because then more people start making or are inspired by that kind of game to make more things. In the years since D&D 5e's release, tabletop has exploded all over the internet. It's way more accessible for people now. People hear about it, talk about it, and it's no longer talked about in the same way that D&D was before. D&D used to be talked about as the weird thing the nerdy guys did in their basements at their mom's house. Now when people talk about D&D and they're like, oh yeah, a lot of my favorite content creators are in D&D campaigns. I've been kind of interested in that. Or like, oh, that movie was kind of fun that we talked about. Or have you guys played Baldur's Gate 3? That game is so fun. It got Game of the Year, you know?
The big one is simply the fact that people who play D&D also like got involved in writing rooms, because like you can tell the noticeable moment where the average writer started being active in like nerd shit and like D&D, because like the tonal shift of the usage of D&D as a narrative device.
True. It
completely changed, because the one I always like to relate it to is the fact that D&D for a long time used to be a shorthand relation to show that a character in a thing was intelligent, but introverted, nerdy, and probably unpleasant. Like that is how it was always used. And it's like, okay, well, we need a hacker guy. We need a guy who knows how to work around computers. I know this guy, he plays D&D. Or like,
right.
Or it's used as an insult. Like that's how you do it. It's the same way as like you have a descriptor, or like a common character design trait that keeps appearing.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like that of like, oh, there's just one thing that is always appearing for a character? Yeah, it's because what that is it's signaling what type of character they are without having to state it. Like, that's just what it is. And then it shifted like really quickly. I think the specific point in time is considered around actually the community episode with D&D was the earliest one. And then, yeah, Stranger Things was right in the D&D like tabletop boom. Like around those points are like the two big ones.
Well, and the funny thing about it is, because D&D is symbolic with being a nerd, because we've entered into the era of nerd culture, like nowadays being a nerd is the coolest thing you can do, which never used to be the case. I mean, heck, like the sheer number of people who are talking about like Magic the Gathering now, doing their own D&D campaigns, like the sheer number of content creators who are considered some of the coolest people on the internet who just do all that kind of stuff now is really funny. And it's because we entered into an age of like unbridled, like uh, like video games are better than they've ever been before. You know, like back 50 years ago, video games were not nearly as cool, not nearly as interesting. So that was the nerd shit. And now video games are like huge, and a lot of us have grown up with video games. And so being a nerd is now the cool thing. You know, like no longer are we looking at the jocks for how cool some people are. Like honestly, even culturally, we don't talk about non-nerds as much as nerds nowadays, because that's just like what's relatable to your average person is what we all have access to. It takes a lot of work and effort to be a jock, but you know what doesn't take a lot of effort? To buy a video game and like a video game, or to buy trading cards and play trading card games, or now to play D&D with your friends. So
Yeah, and it's fun how the time has changed. I know it happened with my school at least, and I know at least what it's shifted from what the kids are doing now, from what I've heard, with the couple of like families I know. When I was growing up, instead of being like you're made fun of for being a nerd and playing video games and stuff, you had to be playing the right games.
yeah,
And you had to be using the right console, which I was lucky. I had a PlayStation. I was in a PlayStation school growing up, like elementary school, playing Call of Duty. So if I had Halo, oh man, I'd be the uncool guy.
yeah.
And then right now it is yeah. Which are you playing, like Fortnite, Apex? Like, are you playing the right battle royale, like big game that's like top shit? Like, are you watching the right streamer kind of deal?
So, you know, it's something where I feel like with tabletop especially, we're having that kind of transition too, where this idea of like tabletop is this super nerdy pen and paper, doing the math yourself and just role playing, being all excited in a room, just using your imaginations to like, oh yeah, let's hop into our game, everyone, and y'all log on to Foundry, and then you move around with your characters on screen, role playing that way. You know, like it's still more or less the same thing, but now we have like better visuals than we ever could before. We have ways we can make maps, and to be honest, I think a lot of older tabletop players highly overestimate how good they are at actually doing tabletop stuff,
I
because
see that a lot.
because I've been to a variety of conventions where I played at some tables with some veterans who are doing like their own thing, and it's just like they drew the cave and it looks really interesting, and then we have a battle, but the problem is the battle is so one-dimensional. It's just a hallway battle. It's just in a cave, you know. There's no elevation put into it or any other things. And when you get map makers and procedural generated things that can add those kind of features for you, or you can better lay those things out without having to worry about the effort of drawing all the extra stuff, you're going to do more. And like, you don't need that to tell a good story. I agree. The best games I've run were all done purely theater of the mind. Granted, we are also playing in a game where a map makes no sense because the characters can move insanely fast or knock an enemy back a mile away. So
Yeah, there's just no point when you're at like a stupidly ridiculous scale where it's like a map means nothing.
But that doesn't mean that the best games I've had were mostly just purely theater of the mind, where we were doing that stuff. You can tell a really good story without having maps and all that other kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean those maps and all that other kind of stuff can't make games better or fun in their own way. And so I feel like creating something that doesn't rely on the skill of the GM to have fun in is really only a good thing, honestly. To make systems that can give a kind of handicap you can look at to people who are not as proficient or not as good, or like have aphantasia, who can't imagine things really well, or players who are just not really good at making decisions and choices. Like, again, something I realized when we were playing some rules light games, I tell the players, do whatever, I'll make it work, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I can't make a choice. I don't know what to do. I don't know what makes sense in this part of the game. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, that's fair. My bad. I put too much work on you guys to make the game work. And with VTTs like Ember and hopefully more in the future, some of that stuff gets alleviated, you know. What the players have to visualize, or what the players have to work off of and build off of, become more accessible, more easy. And we have a lot of really big tabletop games right on the horizon. What is MCDM anywhere near getting done? Oh, Draw Steel. That's Draw Steel. So that's what it got changed to, huh?
You know, actually, I'm realizing this now as like we're talking about it too. As someone who's kind of in this boat, especially with a game that is coming out, where I'm like, I keep looking at like the Cosmere RPG, and I keep having that thought of like, man, I really want to like GM that. I think that'd be really fun, especially because I've kind of started to settle myself in to become a Cosmere fucking turbo dork.
Yeah.
And learn everything. Because I'm now super invested because fun deal. Book 3 of Stormlight Archive, which I'm like deep into now, like super deep, is where all of the intersections apparently start happening. You don't lose anything for starting with Stormlight, but like book 3 is where a bunch of characters from like little references to the other books really happen. And so I'm learning a lot about it, and I'm like, I want to read everything now. And I'm like thinking about it, and I'm like, I've said like I hate GMing. Mm-hmm. Do I hate GMing, or do I hate in-person GMing? Do I hate the work of like prepping for an in-person pen and paper game? Do I just need a good VTT to like help me?
I mean, that's
the fix.
That's an interesting thing, because it has been a thing that keeps cropping up every once in a while. You're just like, I kind of want to run a game, but I hate running games. You keep saying that over and over and over, and that might be. There might just be some aspect of tabletop that you don't like that a VTT might fix.
The big part I genuinely don't like doing is I can't stand the setup and like the prep work. I hate that part. I'm really bad at like that aspect of it, which is why I'm like, if I'm going to do that, full campaign book. Like, I'm not going to make my own story. It's a campaign book. And then the other aspect I don't like is the idea of new game jumping in and being like, man, well, I'm just very rusty with it. I'm not going to be good with it. But if I have a bunch of tools that I'm able to just utilize, well, that's, you know, helping it all out. I keep thinking about like, what are my actual problems with GMing? And then I keep thinking, well, a good VTT mod or tool kind of helps with that, huh?
Yeah.
And I'm really sitting here, like, as you were talking, like, I think I just hate... Do I just hate pen and paper GMing? Is that really what the answer is? Like, because, man, that'd be pretty major if, like, I am literally the target demo for, like, games going super hardcore VTT.
Yeah.
Because I do genuinely love Foundry. At some point, you know, when everything drops, I do already plan on getting all the Cosmere stuff. I will try the Foundry tools. I'll fuck around with it. No promises, but I will fuck around with it.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm excited, potentially. I'm definitely excited for the Cosmere stuff, especially from what I've seen. It feels like it has the same level of crunch that Pathfinder does, which is really good.
Oh yeah, I've also read the I read some of the stuff on Demiplane, by the way, because they
Mhm.
actually do have two other the Radiant paths already laid out.
Yeah, the Dustbringer and the
No, it's the Windrunner and the Lightbringer.
oh.
And I gotta say also, they have the page that's just like all those blocks that tell you basically here's everything you need to know, like in those tiny blurbs.
Yeah.
They do have a segment later on apparently, because Demiplane expands on them for stuff where it's like, okay, here is mechanically more in depth how it works if you need it.
Yeah.
But like when I was reading it, I'm like, this is just more words with like what I already knew.
Right.
Which is like this isn't like necessary, which is really nice. But yeah, no, the Windrunner is sick.
Yeah,
actually.
I bet.
It works so well.
And I just did some research as well, and Draw Steel, which is MCDM stuff, and the DC-20 also next year. So
Okay.
we have Ember, Cosmere RPG, Draw Steel, and DC-20 all releasing next year. And you know what?
Daggerheart?
I think we're gonna have Daggerheart release next year too.
I thought it was releasing next year. If have they just not announced a release date?
Not yet. But they are currently on beta, like 0.7. So
I just assumed it was going to release next year, I guess. But yeah, next year is when shit's popping out, I guess, because everything was getting announced this year.
my concern is that you guys are thinking way too much about how your players perceive you. Very often as a DM, you think too much how good how much your game is when so many players are just happy to be there. I mean, yeah, for sure. That just because your players are just happy to be there doesn't mean you can't be better, you know? People are happy to just play the game. That's for sure the thing. And that's what honestly makes the whole, like VTT movement very good. Because now you need even less to make a game interesting for your players, because the game can help you in so many different ways.
Yeah, I've literally played the gambit of tabletop games, like the gambit of like we're getting together as a group of friends, just schmucking around, having a good time. Like, we are just happy to be here, and then also, like, we are happy to be here, but we're also here to get together, tell a great story, play this great game. I value the idea of tabletop as, like, a skill you can learn, master, and, like, get good at. And so, if I'm going to take time out of it, I do want it to be good. And so, like, it's not something I think is healthy to hyper-focus on while you're doing stuff. But if there's an objective issue that you are doing in your game, it is healthy to be able to examine that, see it, and then be like, okay, how can I address this? How can I work at it? There's a healthy way of doing it. Then obviously with anything, there's the unhealthy way of doing it where it can become bad. But at least like with our groups and stuff, we're very normal.
Yeah.
We're very, very good about it, because we've been doing it for a while. We've been playing games with each other for a long time, so we know how it all goes.
Because like it's all well and good when your players are having fun, right? And that's fine, but that doesn't mean you can't make it more fun,
Exactly. There's always the opportunity of doing that. There's the moment of where you can always be like, you've just had a session that was like fun. It's like, can we make this more fun? And it was like, well, this moment didn't have anything that could have been improved on. It was just a great session. Like, there was no issues that came up, and that's a good thing. And then there are sessions where it's like, well, this thing was a bit I perceived as annoying, and like there's moments you can just chat with people of like, what does everyone want out of a game? What is everyone's tastes? Which I think, is healthy to talk to if people have that relationship and the ability to healthily communicate like that, which again our group does.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even necessarily that. Like, for instance, I can run a really good game where the story is really well laid out and the battles were interesting and yada yada. But literally, like what we did with our session 1 of Mutants and Masterminds, our new campaign.
That was a great session.
It was really good, right? And the thing was, I did almost nothing as a GM. I just improv stuff. But
you asked the right questions.
Well, but see, the thing is, right? It's like, okay, so a game that I did all the right stuff. I prepped the stuff ahead of time. I have a really well laid out story. I have a good amount of impact. And then what we had last time, which was just goofy telling stories and everything like that. It's like, yeah, my players had fun both times, but compared to like the campaign we just ended not too long ago, and literally session 1 of Mutants and Masterminds, the players were way more like talking and having fun with Mutants and Masterminds. And so like there's definitely more fun you can have if you start doing some things right. And it's something that I feel like the right, like, and to be fair, a lot of that was just due to the campiness of our idea of Mutants and Masterminds. Just the silly villains that the group came up against.
We came up with some goofy joke ideas, which I'm excited for when you edit that down, because I want to see it and see how if people watch and enjoy it, because I love some of the stuff we came up with.
It was fun. I'm very excited for that too.
And I love just I love my minions. I want to have more of them. Just coming around doing goofy stuff. I want more of these recurring characters. I can't wait for the moment we have a real threat to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Like an actual, like, oh fuck, this guy is scary and like isn't a joke. That's gonna be really funny. Yeah, there's moments like that where I think it's examining that tabletop is a skill that you can learn, get good at, and you know, it's obviously everything is something you do in moderation and in the proper proportions.
Oh, yeah,
because when you do actually learn how to do everything, and like you learn how to create in what you believe and what your table believes is a good session, it pays off astronomically.
Yeah. So, you know, it's insane. Oyman is right. Renaissance. Next year is going to be a huge year for tabletop. We're going to have some of the biggest names in tabletop, you know, the current age of tabletop anyway, coming out with some games of their own, trying to take what they learned from D&D or whatever other games and try to make it better, try to make it more suited for what they're doing. We have the Cosmere RPG that looks absolutely sick. Ember is going to be the first probably really good example of like a purely integrated TTRPG with a VTT. Next year's huge, and I'm going to be doing my best to cover as much as I can, try to learn as much as I can about everything. I will have a new baby next year, so you know, we'll see how being a dad goes for me. But you know, if y'all haven't done so already, join the Discord, subscribe, follow on Twitch. Do you know, stay tuned, because we got some big things coming out in like a year. Plus, I also have a bunch of stuff for Pathfinder coming out soon as well. I'm very excited. Next year is going to be massive, and we're starting to now see a lot of the early impressions of like what end of next year is going to look like, and I think we got some great stuff coming up. Yeah, well, I mean, life always comes first. That's kind of like the motto of TTRPG players. Life always comes first, but
it's a shame that you have to put that stuff on hold, but it'll pay off. But life does come first.
Yeah. But still, I mean, that doesn't mean you can't listen to the stuff and be hyped about it, you know?
That's more stuff to cook, well, like slow cook, while you are waiting for everything to get ready. It's just stuff prepping for your return.
Yeah, true. I don't know. It's really exciting. I've been saying this for as long as we've been doing this podcast, honestly, is that tabletop is evolving and we're going to start seeing more and more, and we're going to start seeing some more third party. I said this, did I not? We're going to start seeing some more third party stuff coming out for tabletop stuff.
That's true. Third party tools, VTTs, like heavier leans on that.
Yeah, think of how new Pathfinder books are going to be done. Yeah, how many? Oh god, there's so many books.
I know, right? And Cam's gonna cover them all.
I'm gonna cover them all,
intensively.
even if it kills me. I have a new book next month and the month after that. And then at minimum, already 2 new books, which we're probably gonna hear even more about later this year. God. Oh yeah, and they're doing a remaster of Guns and Gears.
Yeah.
Starfinder second. Oh, right, Starfinder second edition releases next year too.
That's true. We completely spaced on that.
Oh no! My God, next year. All right, so next year we're having the 100K subscriber special. With how many blowout games are out, I wouldn't be surprised if the channel like doubles or triples in size. It's nuts. Oh god. You said that, and that was like the straw that broke the camel's back in my brain, where I'm just like, oh no. Next year I'm gonna be so busy. And I have a baby. Oh no. It's gonna be a lot. I'm excited. Also, wargaming has been on the rise too. New war games have been coming out. People have been getting interested in minis. And I think a lot of people are starting to see like the various internet celebrities putting their Warhammer minis out and are like, ooh, if we can get in on that game. Especially with the thought that like 3D printers are going to become more and more common and more accessible as the technology gets better. So the idea that a war game is just like, hey, guess what? We have all these codes for our minis that you can put on your 3D printers. Just make sure you put pictures on the internet about your minis. You know, it's like great marketing. Honestly,
it's literally how Trench Crusade is actually like doing it. Trench Crusade being an indie like war game, most actually indie war games do this. If they have official sculpts, a lot of times they don't sell the models, or if they do, they're like special sells.
Right.
They're selling STL files because like they can't afford to print it because one of the reasons, by the way, for everyone here, a little fun insider info I learned. If there's ever a lot of stuff where you're just like, why is all these minis getting so dang expensive? There's a giant plastics shortage that is not being talked about super heavily. It's going on since COVID. There is a plastic shortage that's been hitting really hard. And so, yeah, we're going to see a lot more of, I think, 3D printing stuff and alternative materials for it. But STL files are going to be a great alternative, and they kind of should be, because it's significantly cheaper. It's so much easier to do. The only thing that holds you back is you can't do competitive 40K. Oh no.
Right.
They won't let you in their big tournaments if you wanted to play competitively, I guess. I did briefly, so I don't want to play competitively no more. I've turned away that lifestyle.
So I feel like tabletop is really, we're really getting into a fun age of tabletop games in general, where like we're just seeing new stuff. We're coming into a new era, and I'm hyped. I hope y'all are too. I'm going to be putting tons of stuff out on it. I know Alex is going to be talking about whatever weird stories or whatever weird settings come out.
Whatever random things tickle my fancy.
Probably a lot of Cosmere coming up.
Oh yeah, no, I already put out my one. I'm gonna work on the second one.
How is that one doing, by the way?
It's slow growing. It's very consistent. It's not popping off. Yeah. I'm gonna try changing the thumbnail, see if that does anything. But Like, right now, I think it's just going to be a slow grower, which I'm fine with. I think one that it might do better is where I actually, like, instead of just do a lore thing like that, I'm going to make a video that isn't as well made, because there's, like, 6 or 7 better lore overviews for Roshar. I'm going to make one where I actually explain how the magic system works. And, like, explain every single Radiant path and, like, what they can do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we were coming up to your, what, 2-year anniversary now for YouTube?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so.
Very
Warhammer
soon.
40K.
Let's see here. September 8th. 3 days, and it'll be your 2-year anniversary.
That's crazy.
I'm still jealous you have a video with 42K views. That's so insane.
I tried to repeat it and it didn't happen, so.
So, I mean, it's still better than it never happening at all, so.
That's fair. People like the Trench Crusade.
But
even though a large chunk of that engagement came from people being weird about it.
Engagement is engagement, you know? But yeah, I think that's going to be it for us today. Alex, anything you want to leave us off with before we head out?
Yeah, as we've kind of been talking about, I have my own YouTube channel where I talk about lore for things. Where I talk about many different things. Warhammer 40K, I have a little bit of Pathfinder, Vampire the Masquerade, and I'm going to be covering Cosmere, largely Stormlight Archive, because it's what I've been reading. So if you want overviews or videos on any of those subjects, go check out my channel. It's Glue Boy. It's linked in Camp YouTube, or just look up Glue Boy. You'll find it, and give those videos a dang old watch. Especially, I have overview videos for like Lancer, Vampire the Masquerade, and Pathfinder, if you ever wanted to get into those things specifically. I've actually been getting comments recently on my specifically Vampire video, which has been popping off in the algorithm for some reason. People being like, thank you so much, I've been trying to get into this, and like I'm playing my first session soon. This saved my ass. Just like, I keep finding videos that are like an hour and a half long and give me no information. Thank you for making a 20-minute video.
Right.
It's like, yeah, that's sometimes all you need to do.
Yeah, as for myself, I am going to be continuing making videos. I've been a little bit slow lately. That's, in all honesty, because I've been working out for the first time in years, and my body was not ready. It wasn't going to be. So
it'll hit you like that.
The recovery days have been a little rough. I worked my arms out like crazy. My arms and chest and shoulders out last night like crazy. So we'll see how I feel like tomorrow when the muscle soreness really kicks in. And tomorrow's supposed to be my leg day too, so that's gonna be fun. Also, we're gonna go get our official ultrasound for our baby girl. So
nice.
That's gonna be a lot of fun too. But I am planning on covering more stuff on Pathfinder. The remaining archetypes from Tiansha Character Guide. I also need to cover stuff from Player Core 2 and Howl of the Wild. There's still some stuff I haven't covered there. I will be covering up the last few official mechs from Lancer very, very soon, and getting back to Cosmere and Fabula Ultima. I just, like I said, just trying to get my body back in working order, and it's been an ordeal. But all right, that's gonna be it for us. Thank you all so much for being here, and I guess we'll go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
All right, everyone.